My name is Linus Alverbrandt. I'm not actually part of this project. I was just given an email. Are you able to speak about the social impact assessment, what it looks like in Sweden at the moment? And I was skiing, and I quickly responded that, yeah, I guess I can do that. And the instructions I was given was that could you give a general picture of what is happening in the field of social impact measurement in Sweden, maybe use of specific models and best practices, as well then as somehow give a basis for this group discussion that's going to be like a big part, as I understand it, of today's conference. Somehow, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities in the social entrepreneurship field when it comes to this social impact measurement? So going back again, who am I, this unsharp figure somehow? What kind of legitimacy do I have to speak about this? Just to sort of give my background so you know what I can speak about and what I can't really speak about when it comes to this topic. I think I will just, since I can do this, so you are able to see as well on the screen. I started about 12 years ago, working as a CSR consultant when the whole social sustainability area was coming in. We were starting to do like sustainable reports and those kind of things that is mainstream today, I guess, using these new tools called like Global Reporting Index and other things. Okay, should I go here? Yeah. So that's sort of my background. But then I came into the social enterprise world, where me and another friend started a social integrating social enterprise in Sweden. And that I have been working with for quite some time. For 6-7 years, we built up that, and we grew around Sweden. And then I also got another position within that enterprise to somehow, since we were growing on maybe 10 different places in Sweden, what's much more to somehow, what is our main strategy? How can we measure that somehow? And from that, I came into the SROI world, where we started to use that as a concept to measure our progress. And we also started a small SROI network in Sweden that is today also part of the International Social Value International. So I'm sitting in the board still today. And since about 2 years ago, a little bit more, I'm also affiliated with the Copenhagen Business School, where I'm a PhD student at the moment in this broad, it's a Center for Civil Society Studies. But so my main topic today is not social impact assessment, I have to say that. But of course, I'm still touching up on that sometimes in different things. So what I will focus on today is maybe more than my scholarly position to problematize or to somehow also see what is impact assessment sort of doing to this field, to have those kind of questions. Doing this, I will also, of course, I will give 4 different cases of some data that I started collecting just when I entered my PhD. Then I went on parental leave for 1 year, and then I came back and did something else. But I will still go back to that. So that's not, I haven't thought that through really perfectly, but I think it still can be a good kind of basic for our discussion here today. Does that make sense for you? You're nodding? Yeah. And please interrupt me if you have questions. I'm going to take one Danish case as well from Sociala Kapitalfond. I saw somewhere, someone present here today from Social Capital Fund? In a while. And also the Swedish example of Reach for Change. I saw somewhere also on both of you are part of that? Okay, interesting. The Danish or the Swedish? The Danish. So, yeah, that's good to have some feedback when it comes to that. So maybe I actually just skip this and go actually to, because what I was looking at is, of course, you can see all kind of different projects, like some is really sophisticated, have adapted SROI and doing all kinds of things, but I would say the mainstream is still that you report back on activities. Maybe in the social enterprise where you're more and more trying to see still find some kind of outputs. But what I had as my point of departure when collecting this data was actually to somehow look on a micro level, because the way, if you are a social entrepreneur in Sweden and you want to get money, there are a few places where you somehow can go. And the way that they want you to report back on how those money are used, of course, is having an impact in two different ways. Of course, it's making the social enterprise change as in order to adapt to get this funding. And it's also somehow, I think, contributing to a way of cognitive change, how the social is supposed to be framed. Is that too much of academic language, or do you understand what I mean in this case? The social could be anything, but somehow what you are supposed to report back upon is limiting your view on this is what's important, employment is important, or whatever it could be. So this is also an effect, I think, of evaluation that I think it's interesting to look at. And you have to do this. This is how you live your life. You can't take in the whole reality all the time. You have to focus on different things. But it's sort of an idea now, I think, in social impact assessment that you're trying to come up with more and more sophisticated tools in order to gather a social reality that is out there. You can be more precise in sort of finding it. And just the more of a philosophic approach that I will enter my data here is that it's a political position somehow, what you want to, how you use social impact assessment in order to capture the part of the reality that it's your political interest. If I'm becoming too academic, because I'm just sort of in this context at the moment, so please interrupt me and say I don't understand, or what do you mean?
I actually quite agree with it.
You agree with it? Okay, that's also it.
For a very simple reason, because the kind of work these social enterprises and social change makers are doing, basically, the governments, well, I'm British, but originally I'm from Pakistan. We've got a range of products and services in social enterprise in Pakistan. So keeping that context in mind, you're absolutely right. I mean, the challenges, be it energy, be it poverty alleviation, be it health, education, these are those things that the government should be taking care of. So actually it's kind of a political movement that these social enterprises, without realizing what they're doing, they're creating, and a point will come, and it has come, to tell you the truth, in small part of the village communities, where these social enterprises have actually led to the political positions because of the kind of work and the quality it has actually brought in. So I can agree with that.
Yeah. So, yeah. I think that's an interesting discourse anyway. I know there was a guy also from Vinnova in Sweden. Is he here? That is actually doing kind of norm, or can you tell me just quickly what you are doing, for example?
We have a program for social innovation, and then we have a program for norm-critical innovation, and that is a longer discussion to take up what that exactly is, but it's based on the discriminative laws in Sweden, and we seek innovations that address those in different ways.
So that's also an interesting part, I think, of the social entrepreneurship movement. Maybe that it's both somehow helping to fix the current system, but then it's also some initiatives sort of trying to change the current system in different ways. So, but thank you. Thank you for the different inputs. So just quickly, I looked at a lot of the different things, but I took out 4, I think. Okay. 4 different social investors that you could turn to if you live in Sweden or in Denmark, for example, then, if you want to get money. And one of them is Allmänna arvsfond, and I think you would translate it social inheritance fund, where people that die that don't have anyone to inherit their money is given to this special fund that is supporting social innovation, they say, but it's very much of a bottom-up perspective, where they want to have a democratic process, where the youth mostly are supposed to be engaged, starting all kind of different projects. If you're just looking at their homepage, they want you to report those money that you're giving back on a sort of activity. What have you been doing with this target group? Different activity measurements to be yeah, like to make it easy for you. And then you have the very then sophisticated sociala kapitalfond that is much more looking at different outcomes. How many, does everybody know sociala kapitalfond here in Denmark? I think it's quite a familiar case. I will maybe not talk so much about it if you already know it. Yes? Yeah. So very much looking at how much is the company growing and how many people were that company able to hire that previously was unemployed, and sort of getting an output measurement for the social value created. And then, for example, then Reach for Change, who has said they have different rights. They have 6 different rights of health development, participation, protection, social inclusion, education, economic participation. That they sort of have all kinds. They're just targeted, and then, as they say, the very well-educated social entrepreneurs in order somehow to come up with different ideas and how to approach these different rights. They also supposed then to follow theory of change and also then to do a most significant change. Do you know what that is? Just to say different methods that's going on in the field. That's much more. You just ask your stakeholders to somehow present of what's been happening during the program, what was the key gold value when it comes to this, and they are able to then tell a narrative much more than report back on a specific indicator. And then they gather all this different narrative, what was the really core change of it, and then they report that as well. And then this is a case in Malmö that I have been following a bit more closely. It's called Kraftsamling Herrgård, and they imported an idea from the philanthropy movement in the US, and a method called collective impact. Is that a familiar term with any of you around the table? And what they want to do anyway is that they see social change not as a single initiative, somehow trying to change it, but they have in a quite troubled Swedish suburb to Malmö that has been a lot in the media and so on, where it's only 20% that have an employment, less than half of the children is passing school and so on. They have merged 55 actors at the moment, working on very many different aspects of the social situation at hand, but in a very strategic manner, using a shared measurement idea, where it's not just, in order to get the child to pass school, it's not just to get more direct initiatives aiming at the children, but rather it's also to work with the family to get work for the parents, because if the parents don't have work, the children doesn't see the need actually to go to school and to do your work in that way. And it's also somehow to train the teachers in the school and the principals to somehow have a different approach when it comes to education. And then it's also the city of Malmö and other more policy level decision makers is sitting at the same table. Sort of, can we give more money to this area? And they are discussing different policy levels. So they are still working on this, but I just took an American case just to show you what kind of, how impact measurement is used when it comes to this. So then it's much more, you gather all kinds of data, both on the very individual level, then you have different other indicators for the family level, the more meso levels, and then you continue, and you have all kinds of measurements. And it's not the same way of, did we actually make a progress? You have some indicators before, and then you do them afterwards, and you see, did we make a progress? This is much more used as a way to talk with each other, to have a political discussion. So, okay, now we help the families. There is more parents having jobs. Did that really affect the situation in school at the moment? And if it didn't, why not? And this is the sort of way that social impact measurement is used then to create these kind of discussions. And these measurements can be changed anytime, but it's more to have the discussion going and then to try to affect the whole system rather than to target a specific social need. And since they are not collaborating, they are rather working together, it also means that there is no need, as you do in Stroy and so on, to try to know what is, of all the impact that happened, what was my contribution in this. This is a lot of work for you who have done a Stroye, to somehow try to deluminate what all others did in order to find my impact on this. So this is just, they're just measuring impact, and they know that the impact was a part of so many different things. And it's not that important actually to know what my contribution was in this. So this is 4 different takes, I would say, on how you can see social, how you can use it, and this way. You have to do a sort of a matrix if you're in the academic world. So this is just the thought I did after just looking at the home pages, and then I also called. Every one of these had what could be known as an evaluation manager or something like that. So then I got some more insight behind this, and I think this is where the interesting part come in. How much time do I have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Yes.
Can I have 5?
Yes, I can give you.
Is it okay? Okay.
From mine.
Oh, okay.
No coffee breaks.
So, like, the thing is that if just looking at the Swedish Inheritance Fund or the Allmänna Arvsfonden, you could see that, okay, they are very far away when it comes to, they should really improve their social impact assessment. They are just following up on activities. This is old-fashioned in a way. But when speaking about, like, the woman who was in charge of this, having a PhD and everything, it was extremely political just starting to asking questions about this. Like, she saw it as a way to reduce reality. She explained that their sort of conception, their basic understanding of social change is actually some democratic involvement. What happens if we put up from the top different measurement that they are supposed to measure up on? Then different ideas, different democratic ideas that can come up. So for them, just to measure on activities was a way sort of to just make 1,000 flowers bloom in a way, to create all kinds of ideas. And you could see that they didn't want to somehow put too much burden on, but rather just to reflect on what they have been doing. And of course, if you're in investment bank, then you have another method, which is good for that. Then you focus in very much maybe on, you have a method, you know how to scale up different companies, and in this way you can create a lot of works for people that haven't been able to get a work. So then, although I know that they was working a lot with Stroy and tried to do that, it didn't make much sense actually, because the best indicator somehow was the output measurement. How many jobs did we create? How much did we able to scale and actually grow the enterprises that we were working together with? So then it's a more of an understanding of social change as sort of expanding the current system to also include the people that is unemployed or not able to come into this. So that's a very different thing. So while here there could be initiatives wanting to have this a basic income salary for everybody, that would not be possible for those initiatives maybe to apply for funding there. So it's different approaches and maybe different ways of exchanging it. We have the Reach for Change girl that I talked with. Instead, to trying to find a solid base, they had the rights focus. But instead of having the same kind of method for everybody, you had the same kind of, you're still trying to somehow gather, and correct me now if I'm wrong, or we could have a discussion about that. So somehow still, that in order for the different initiatives and the social entrepreneur to have something in common, they could gather around different core rights, having very different methods going about doing that. But you could still maybe find indicators, and you could help each other with somehow working for health or for inclusion. This is still the same for us, although we're working with very different projects. Yeah.
All our change leaders in our portfolio all measure on the same outputs. But when it comes to the impact of the outcome, then it's indicators that they use, and they can be different. They can, of course, be aligned in the different, we have the 6 different investment themes that we showed before. So some of the indicators are the same.
Okay.
But outputs is all the same, mostly, and the outcome varies.
Cool.
But with that call that we described.
Yeah. But it's another way. So here is the way to see what initiatives in the portfolio is somehow like performing the best. We should scale up more. This is more of a sort of a learning-oriented evaluation. I just put that word on it. And then we have the last case. They say sort of that it's a system that needs to change. It's not possible to take one good example from this place and just put it in the next context, because all contexts are very different. You have to see what players you have there. You have to see what historical background that is leading to this social situation. So this is a way of sort of doing everything differently. Although you have the same kind of involvement process going on, agreeing upon a sort of shared measurement that we saw, this can be very different in different places. So this is more of a way of sort of transforming a whole system than that they have as their primary goal. So finally, just to see, of course, this has consequences. Sort of, what does that mean for scaling social change? In the case of Swedish Inheritance Fund, they more than employed scholars to do large sort of meta studies of all the initiatives that they had in order to spread and for people to just get ideas of what could be done. This is, of course, the company then performing the best is also the one that we should maybe scale up and put more money into. And if I just, to save time, jump down on then the like the Malmö case, rather than actually spreading this idea, they are trying to maybe scale deep, I said, and that means that rather they're trying to get more actors involved. Now there are maybe 10 people working on safety issues. So they have the police, they have the fire department, they have different like nonprofits, but they also want to have the library there, and they want to have different other people, like organizations. So they are much more trying to go deeper into a single problem rather than to spread it. Okay, that was a lot of words. Please contact me if you have some more questions. Or do we have time for questions?
Otherwise, there will be a time. I hope you will join us for the day, and there will be chances to grab a hold of Linus and us. And thank you for a very interesting presentation.